everyone. We are here with Marcus Sheridan, and I have been looking forward to this conversation for weeks, and I'm really excited to have you join us live or on the replay. Feel free to comment below and let us know any questions that are coming up for you as we dig into this conversation that really is about what we're both observing in the online world right now and in business at large, especially with the disruption of AI, what's changing in the economy and the world at large. There's obviously a lot happening. And the Elevate series, as I was just telling Marcus, is really designed to hold space for entrepreneurs, to show them possibility, to give them a beacon of light, to offer some positivity and something that's a little bit more grounded than some of what we're seeing on LinkedIn and news headlines. Marcus is somebody that I have a genuine, deep respect for. Ever since I first saw him speak, I just immediately was so energized, thinking, that's my people right there. The way he really advocates for transparency, sustainable business, being a true, genuine service provider, exceeding expectation, getting word of mouth. I could just go on and on. In fact, I did on LinkedIn. I wrote a whole post about my feelings about Marcus, but he has such an interesting vantage point with the different businesses that he's around. He's constantly on the road speaking. So Marcus, thank you for taking some time to be here today. I really appreciate it. And I really want to dig in and just first ask you, what have you been seeing? We could even say in the last 3 months, but I also feel like what we just saw in the news this morning, even we could dig into. But what's really your perspective on all of this?
Yeah, I guess I've been a business owner now for about 25 years. I've never seen the rate of change and evolution like I'm seeing it right now. And I think a lot of folks are like that. I think a lot of folks probably feel a little bit intimidated and a bit overwhelmed by that change and by everything that's happening. One of the biggest changes I see, just if we're talking online, we're talking about businesses, is for 20-ish years, Amber, we really had to make two entities, if you will, happy so as to recommend us to win in business. The first one was humans. We had to make them happy. That's never going to change. The customer, right? It's never going to change. Second one, we'll just call it Google. Traditional search engines. The way we won Google was twofold. Number one, we gave it money, and we call that paid ads. Or number two, we did content marketing, SEO, and we showed up in search results. And that worked pretty well for a lot of marketers for about 20 years. And what's extraordinary now is that model with Google is absolutely dying. And it's not going to be around, at least as we know it. I think Google will, but certainly not the traditional search experience in 5 years.
And which is crazy. This is where we built our companies.
That's right. That's right. And so if you're building your house on Google, you could be in significant trouble because today we have a third entity that has to recommend us, and that's AI. And the issue is it's much harder to get AI to recommend you than Google because a couple reasons. Number one, you can't throw money at it, at least not yet. So you can't just do paid ads and think ChatGPT is going to show me. And number two, there's a lot less results that they show. And so because of that, now the obsession starts to turn towards how do I get AI to recommend my business? And there's lots of different names for this. AI optimization and AIO, and then there's another like 15 different acronyms that folks are using. But I can tell you for certain that in the years ahead, we're going to have to win AI. In my personal opinion, and I've seen this over and over again now, though, especially over the last 3 years since we saw the advent of ChatGPT, is that the big factor here is going to be trust signals. And how many trust signals can you create as an individual and as a brand to get humans to say, I trust that person, and to get AI to say, I trust that person? I've identified about 20-ish of these trust signals. I'm going to be talking a lot more about it. But this is going to be the thing that's driving so many of us as we move forward.
There's a lot of conversation about how to manipulate AI so that you're showing up inside of search. And even if you ask AI, how can I get found? You're going to get different answers every single time. But I can tell you that just this morning, I was getting some data in from some people that have websites, and they were reporting a third of the traffic just in the last 2 weeks that they're used to getting
Gone.
because of the way that Google summary is populating answers, that literally most of their traffic has just disappeared overnight in the last 2 weeks. So this is happening real time, folks. And
Yeah.
I saw your post on LinkedIn about Google reviews, and
Yes.
if you wanted to speak into that a
Sure.
little bit about trust signals, probably.
Yeah. Well, to what you just said, we know that now roughly 2/3 of all searches in Google don't end in a click. Okay. Over 2/3 do not end in any click because they're getting their summary right there. They're getting their answer right there. Now, what this means is, in that in conjunction with AI, and I'll talk about my post this morning too in a second, but what that means is, in a lot of ways, because of the way SEO worked, your website was the top, the middle, and the bottom of the funnel. And the way that we're trending towards, Amber, is your website is much more becoming bottom of the funnel, really a conversion asset, and they're doing top, middle in other places. There's also an argument, a very strong one, not to just open up a whole can, a very strong argument that your YouTube page will be much more important to your brand than your website will be within the next 5 years. And for some of you, that's absolutely the case right now. But in terms of these trust signals, one of the clear front runners of the most important signals right now for AI and AI recommendations. For example, if somebody goes online and searches, who is the best pool builder in Richmond, Virginia, or whatever it is, right? Could be any business, could be any location. What I've done a bunch of studies on this, and so there's a variety of factors that will cause them to recommend you. But what's most interesting is when you go in and you ask about specific companies and why they were not recommended. That's when you really start to learn. A lot of folks wouldn't think to do that, but that's the way that that's what I'm interested in. And what we're seeing is the reason why it doesn't recommend you AI, number one, is negative reviews. Either you've gotten too many negative reviews over the course of time, or your recent reviews are troubling. And AI is literally looking at these things, which is very, very fascinating. And a lot of folks will poo poo this and they'll say, that's not how an LLM works. Okay, that's fine, but they won't offer you a better solution, right? Just like if you look at my post, there's a lot of debate there as to, is that what's causing, is that, it's like people can debate it, but I see the patterns because of the amount of companies that I work with or I hear from that are applying the principles that I teach in my books. I get to see this stuff all the time. Can you optimize for AI recommendations? Yes, you absolutely can. And reviews right now is really the lead horse.
Goodness. Thank you for really bringing it today, because there was so much that I could even unpack just in what you were just sharing. What do you think is the most concerning business trend that you're seeing, and where would you steer people toward instead?
Well, one of the things that I'm concerned about just generally is if you look at a lot of companies right now, they've uh, over the years been quite dependent on paid ads to generate leads for their business. Leads is everything, as you know, Amber, to a business. I think the most important job for any CEO is to make sure you have enough leads. You can have a great culture. If you got no leads, you got no business. So it's like you have got to always create leads if you want to survive and ultimately if you want to thrive. What I'm hearing, and I'm hearing from all the places that I speak and the different organizations and different industries, that I consistently hear over and over again, Marcus, I'm spending more on Google Ads than I've ever spent, and I'm seeing less results than I've ever gotten. My customer acquisition cost is higher than it's ever been. My cost per lead is higher than it's ever been. Like these are just like consistent things I keep
It's
hearing
not
over and over.
sustainable.
That's
Yeah.
right, and it's unsustainable for a lot of folks, and they don't really necessarily know how to, just like how to use AI and how to take advantage of AI. I would tell you this, that another trend, a lot of folks just use AI. A lot of businesses use AI like it's Google. Stop using it like it's Google. Stop thinking of it like a tool. I wouldn't call, if I had, and I have employees, right? And I would not call any of my employees a tool. And I certainly don't call AI a tool. I don't call electricity a tool, right? These are not tools to me, right? These are assistants. It's like energy. They create things. And so the whole mindset of the way that you view AI, just generally speaking, has to change. Way too many people seeing it like a tool, like a Google. Stop using it like a tool and like Google, and you're going to start to see some incredible benefits from it. One other thing that I have to say that I think is a really big trend, Amber, and sorry for just the word vomit on my part, but
Please, I'm
one of the
loving
big ones is 75% of all buyers today say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. That's from Gartner, and that number is growing. Now, this doesn't mean that we hate salespeople. It just means that we don't want to talk to a salesperson until we're ready, until we're confident, until we're comfortable, until we feel like we're not going to make a mistake. So what does this mean for your business? Well, what it means, especially for your website, is you need to start taking advantage of this self-service trend. Give the buyer more control. And I talk a lot about this in my book, Endless Customers, and I
We've
really
been
dive into
talking
that.
about this for 15 years, Marcus.
Yes. Yeah.
This
Oh,
is
yeah.
where I was like, he's
Oh,
my
yeah.
guy. Because
Yes.
it was year 2, so it must have been 2009. I had this sales call with a guy named Larry, and I'm taking him through the whole process. And he wasn't qualified. It was an hour of time. My closing ratio was like 25% back then. And I thought there's got to be a better way. So I set up a video on my website, 2009, folks.
Yeah, you were ahead of the game, girl.
Set up a video on my website going step by step through the process, gave a pricing menu PDF upfront, all of the prices, the ranges, the payment plans, baked with testimonials, and let that be the sales driver. So by the time people got onto a call with me, it was a 30-minute call. My closing ratio went up to 60%. Why? Because you're giving the buyer control up front, which is, you and I have been talking about this a long, long time. And now, how funny, full circle moment, this is the way forward as well. So please continue.
Yeah, yeah. And I found that there's really 5 self-service tools that you can put on, especially on sites if you want to explode conversions. So a lot of people are having a problem converting leads, right? So one thing that you can do today to convert more leads is to use these self-service style tools. The most prolific one in terms of efficacy would be a self-pricing tool or a pricing calculator. And I've been talking about how to discuss pricing online for years. And a lot of people think that that means you're giving your price. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you're addressing the fundamental question that everybody has when they start the buyer's journey. The first question someone has when they start the buyer's journey, like this is the gateway of the buyer's journey, is roughly, what's this going to cost me? I'm just trying to get a sense. Like, what am I looking at here? Am I in the game or not? Everybody has asked those questions over the years. If you can't get that answer, you stop. Oftentimes, you don't even walk through. So you got to have that answer, and then you feel like you've received permission subconsciously to walk through the rest of the buyer's journey, reach out to some companies, and eventually you will buy. And so a self-pricing tool or a pricing estimator simply goes on your site, and you want to use the phrase get instant estimate for whatever your service is or your product is. And then just as if someone asked you right now, roughly, what does it cost for whatever that thing is that you do? You would ask a series of questions. And then at the end, you'd say, well, based on what you told me, I think you're going to be somewhere in this range. Well, a tool could do that for you right now, and you get the conversions. I started a company last year called Price Guide, and you can find it at priceguide.ai. And allows folks, especially service-based businesses, to build estimators that you can put on your website. And with the help of AI, it will help you to build it. And here's what we found. I've got like empirical data on this. And that is when someone puts this on their homepage and clearly says, get instant estimate, your leads will increase 3 to 5x. So I've had folks that were struggling, like Marcus, I'm kind of in the weeds. I'm only getting a couple leads a week. Like they'll go from 2 leads a week to 8, 9, or 10 leads a week simply by having an estimator on their site. So that's one amazing way that very little money, like if you look at a tool like Price Guide, like $20 a month, and all of a sudden you have like, tripled, quadrupled your leads. That's a huge deal to build your pipeline out and to start to feel like you've got health and wellness again, from a cash flow perspective. So that's a big deal. There's other types of self-service tools, recommendation tools. I call them self-selection tools, which essentially help someone decide between choices. Let me give you a technical example. I've always been like, looked at HubSpot, and they've got these different tiers that they offer, different like tiers of HubSpot. But I've always
Mhm.
wondered, why do you not allow someone to do an interactive experience on your website that recommends one of those different levels of HubSpot or any SaaS or anything like that?
Sure.
They don't do that. They should, because what has to happen? You're sitting there, you're like, I don't know what level I should use. What's the right one for me? Should I get the medium? Should I get the large? Blah, blah. And then you have to talk to a salesperson. And you're like, I just need a little help here. Whereas you could do this tool, it could ask you questions just like a salesperson would, give you an honest recommendation. And then when you show up to the sales call, just like you mentioned a minute ago, Amber, you're already ready because you're informed. You're like, oh, I already know what I need. I took that little tool on your site. It recommended that I do this, and that's the one that I want because I put in all my parameters. Like, that is so powerful.
So
Let's choose
powerful.
your own adventure. People
Yep.
love that stuff.
Yes.
So self-service is the future, my friends.
Okay, so Google disruption, AI search, maybe YouTube is the answer. Websites bottom of funnel. We need to give more power, control, transparency to the buyer and be aware of that. Where does word of mouth play in all of this? Because, like, honestly, Marcus, word of mouth has taken such good care of me over the course of almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And I think if you just treat people well and let them know what you're up to and where you're going, you could even go back to past customers and reconnect with them and just see how they're doing. And that would rekindle this relationship. And who knows what could come out of it. And I'm curious your take, is word of mouth important now more than ever in a stage of disruption? And what techniques would we give to people to help them on their way with that?
Yeah, I think it's very evergreen. In fact, in my book Endless Customers, the one that just came out a couple months ago, there's 4 pillars in there of a known and trusted brand. And one of the pillars, the final pillar, is be more human than others are willing to be. And in a time where you should be using the tools and the technology and all these things that are available to you to better your business and to offer a better, let's call it, service and experience, you got to elevate the human element too. They don't have to run diametrically opposed. A lot of people think it's like, oh, if I'm using AI, I'm going to dehumanize. It does not need to be the case whatsoever. Let me just give you some like like really simple examples of this. Most folks send emails today exactly like they did in 1997 when we all started using email as a text. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it, right? It's like 30 years into the game and we're sending email exactly the same as we did when we had AOL or Hotmail. Like, what is going on here? Whereas, what happens if you send a video-based email instead? And, just think about, just for a lot of folks, you get a lead, send a video first to intro yourself to the lead. And then before your first sales call, another video that maybe sets the conditions or the tone or like the agenda or whatever it is. Follow up, another video that, discusses what said, when, after you started working with them for a while or after they bought from you, another video that's thanking them for the business, whatever it is. It's like, there's all these things you can do. It's very humanizing. This is why, CEOs today, there's some different stats on this, but 71% of people prefer to work with a brand where the CEO, where they can actually know who the CEO is and the CEO is involved online. So they want, because people develop relationships with people generally, not
Yes.
so much with brands. And
Right.
this is why, like, for me, I've got in my little brand that I have, if I post something like a Marcus video on my company websites, uh, gonna suck, like in terms of its engagement. If I post a video of myself on my stuff, it's gonna have legs. And that's because people want to engage with Marcus on Marcus's stuff. And from that, I'm able to help build my businesses. And that's why I'm such a believer in Daniel Priestley's key person of influence definition, because really there's 2 types of influence out there online today. There's influencers, and then there's a key person of influence. Now, what's the difference? Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to put myself on camera. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to be that person. It's like, oh, look at me. It's like, no, 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 no. You're saying you don't want to be an influencer, but you do want to be a key person of influence, because here's the difference. An
Mm.
influencer says, hey, look at me. A key person of influence says, hey, look at this. And
That's
then
a
says,
great
here's
distinction.
how you can benefit. That's what resonates. So if you look at like 99% of the content that I publish online, on LinkedIn, for example, almost all of it is, hey, look at this. This is how it could help you. You're the hero. It's not about me, right?
Mhm.
And if it is a story about me, I'm going to try to bring it back to you because I still want you to be the hero of the story, which is very, very important.
It's almost like being a guide is the way that I look at it. That makes me
Yeah.
feel a little bit more comfortable, like I'm showing you what I'm up to or the way I'm doing something. So it's not about Amber. It was never about Amber. It's actually about you. So we're very aligned in that. And I think what I would add in terms of getting more word of mouth is definitely it's about the experience that you provide for people. You know, a lot of times when we're meeting up with someone, we're thinking, oh my gosh, what do I look like? What am I going to say? What am I going to
Mm.
get out of
Oh,
this?
yeah.
And I really try to show up of just like, it's good to be with you. How are you doing? And being of service, being helpful, being genuine, being open. Um, and so how you make
Well,
people,
it's such a good point, right? And it's also just almost like this is one of those I watch a lot of like things like sales calls and things like this and observe a lot of interactions with my job and or speakers even. Inherently, one of the biggest issues I see, and the person doesn't realize this, is subconsciously they're trying to appear smart, intelligent, and hey, I
oh yeah,
belong. And so because of that, they are not able to present the best version of themselves.
no, they're
Whereas,
not present. Yeah.
yeah, whereas like we're doing right now, my goal not to sound smart. My goal is to be understood. That's it. That's it. I don't want to say anything that's above anybody's head. I want to say it in such a way that the person's like, yeah, that's obvious. That makes so much sense. Huh. Sure, I could do that. If you can do that, why can't I do that? Like, those are all the vibes that we want people to have. And that's what gets people because there's this like, again, be more human than others are willing to be. Don't try to
Yes.
be above them. It's like, it's the
No.
same reason why, like, when I speak to an audience, oftentimes, assuming it's not too big of a crowd, I will always step off the stage and stand with the audience, and that's
Yeah.
because I don't want them to feel like I am looking down on them. It's like, "Hey,
Right.
we're gonna take a journey together today, and we're gonna have a full conversation. We're all on the same level right now." And that mindset applies to many facets of your life. And so I would say to everybody who's listening to this is let go of the need to sound smart, to impress, and then when you're talking with that person, get incredibly curious. Ask the questions that they've never been asked before. And one great indicator of this is, especially in the one-on-ones, is, and I have this as a KPI for my for any of the sales teams that we train, and that is how often do you receive the question or the statement? Does somebody say to you, "Huh, no one has ever said that to me before," or "Huh, no one's ever asked me that before"? That is a sign that you're an extraordinary communicator. And that's what's going to really connect you with that person in that moment. And then when you talk about referrals, like you build, you've galvanized the relationship. So now long term, there's just something there, something special with that person because you made such a connection.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Okay, we have like 30 to 60 seconds left, Marcus, and I want to allow you to just say anything else that's on your heart or mind to share to help people during this crazy time that we're living in.
One of the best piece of advice I've ever been given when you feel like things are just a little bit chaotic in the world and around you is the phrase circle of influence. What is within your circle of influence? Focus on that. Change that. That's the thing you can impact. I personally can't handle what's happening with the governments around the world. Excuse me, I can't change it. I'm not going to affect it. You know, to the degree that I can't really do much. Not saying that I don't care, but I
Sure.
can't do much. But what I can do is I can do my part within my circle to better those things around me. That's my circle of influence. That's my focus. And if enough people do that, then it has a domino effect and it reaches out and it can really beautify the masses. That's my mindset. I know it's true. I know it works.
Marcus, thank you so much for your time. I personally learned a lot, and I have so many more questions for you. So I might slip them to you in an email and give you some good ideas for, content to post on LinkedIn next week to satisfy my curiosity. But definitely, if you've not seen Marcus live, find out where he's speaking next. He's an incredible speaker. If you're looking for a speaker at your next event, I highly endorse Marcus as well. We'll look forward to seeing you next week on the Elevate series. Thanks so much for your time, everyone.